Blessed love, brothers and sisters. This is not a Shabbat lesson. It's an impromptu video. And I'm going to tackle the legacy of slavery in the Caribbean, brothers and sisters. Legacy of slavery in the Caribbean. Right? The image you see on the screen is the Ark of Return, the permanent memorial to honor the victim of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, located at the Visitors Plaza of United Nations headquarters in New York. Right? This photo was taken by Rick Bayornas. Right, brothers and sisters? The legacy of slavery in the Caribbean. Right? It is now universally understood and accepted that the transatlantic trade, it is now universally understood and accepted that the transatlantic slave trade is chained enslaved Africans was the greatest crime against humanity committed in what is now defined as the modern era. In terms of its scale and its social, psychological, spiritual, and physical brutality, especially inflicted upon so-called Africans as a targeted ethnicity. This vastly profitable business and the considerable subsequent suppression of the humanity and criminal nature of slavery was ambiguous and usurping of moral values. The demographics that the juggernaut economic enterprise of the slave trade and slavery represented are today well known, in large measures thanks to nearly 3 decades of dedicated scientific and historical research driven significantly by United Nations Educational, Scientific and Culture Organization, and by recent initiatives including United Nations Outreach Program on the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. Some 12 to 20 million so-called Africans were enslaved in the Western Hemisphere after an Atlantic voyage of 6 to 10 weeks. This voyage, now known as the Middle Passage, consumed some 20% of its human cargo. Disease and death were common outcomes in this humane tragedy. The Caribbean was the core of the crime against humanity induced by the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. Some 40% of enslaved so-called Africans, were shipped to the Caribbean islands, which in the 17th century surpassed Portuguese Brazil as a principal market for enslaved labor. The sugar plantation of the region, owned and operated primarily by English, French, Dutch, Spanish, and Danish colonists, consumed black life as quickly as it was imported. Capitalism and black slavery were intertwined. The Atlantic economy in every aspect was effectively sustained by so-called African enslavement. So-called Africans, right? So-called. Critically, the Caribbean was where chattel slavery took its most extreme judicial form in the instrument known as the Slave Code, which was first instituted by the English in Barbados, passed in 1661. This comprehensive law defined Africans as heathens. I tell you, these colonizers, I tell you, these wicked colonizers, bro. They call us Hebrews heathens. You know what I mean? You have the nerve to call us heathen after we didn't bother nobody. I tell you, these people and these gymnastic word mind game, brothers and sisters, right? Let me read that over again for you. Critically, the Caribbean was where chattel slavery took its most extreme judicial form in the instrument known as the Slave Code, which was first instituted by the English in Barbados, passed in 1661. This comprehensive law defined so-called Africans as heathens and brutes, brothers and sisters. They call us brutes as if we came over in America and Jamaica and just wipe you out. And Barbados and Haiti would just wipe you out, right? We didn't do that dumb shit. We wiped you out because of defense of your wickedness. You understand? You call us brutes, right? After we didn't enslave you wickedly, right? And do some horrendous things. But we are the brutes, right? We Hebrews are the brutes, right? Okay. Alright. Not fit to be governed by the same laws as, yeah, see, your religion, Christian. That's where you get your religion from, right? Your oppressor's religion. And you won't leave it alone, right? You're going to get destroyed with them. The legislators proceed to define Africans as non-human, a form of property to be owned by purchasers and their heirs forever. This is fulfillment of Deuteronomy. No man shall buy and sell you. You become property. Buy and sell property, right? Buy and sell property. The legislators proceed to define so-called African as non-human, a form of property to be owned by purchasers and their heirs forever. The slave code went viral across the Caribbean and ultimately became the model applied to slavery in the North American English colonies, and that would become the United States. Barbados in the Caribbean became the first large-scale colony populated by a black majority, and South Carolina in the United States assumed the same status. In this way, black enslavement became the primary institution for social and economic governance in the hemisphere. It was the basis of wealth creation in both production and commerce. In most societies, slavery investors emerged as the political economic elite capitalism, and black slavery were intertwined. The Atlantic economy in every aspect was effectively sustained by so-called African enslavement. The legacy of the social and economic institution of slavery is to be found everywhere within these societies, and in particular dominant in the Caribbean. While colonialism has been in retreat since the nationalist reform of the mid-20th century, it persists as a political feature of region, right? It persists as a political feature of the region. Europe remains a colonial power over some 15% of the region population, and the relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico is generally understood as colonists. Right, brothers and sisters? So, I keep have to go over this over and over, right? A lot of people get offended why most of us here in America, Jamaica, Barbados, Haiti, Nova, St. Kitts, Guyana, Trinidad, right? And we say we're so-called Africans. It's not that we're not connected to Africa. The continent of Africa, Africa is a continent with many, many countries and many, many languages. You see. But the land of Yashel is located on the continent of Africa, but it's northeast of Africa. So you could say we're African Hebrews or African Israelites, but truly our nationality is Yashelites. Truly our identity are Hebrews. And the language we speak are Hebraic. Our forefathers spoke, and we just now coming to learn our language little by little. This is going to be difficult because of the severance of not learning our language. Our fathers and our mothers before didn't know our language, and their fathers and their mothers before them, and so forth, brothers and sisters. So, it's going to take a while for us to get it by little by little. That's why we need institution in the schools in Jamaica, so we could get back to our learning our language was stolen from us during brutal chattel slavery. Right, brothers and sisters, if you look at the screen, here's the ambassador A Missouri Sherman Peter, permanent observer of the Caribbean Community CARICOM to the United Nations at the UN headquarters in New York, 13th of May 2016. Right? Most Caribbean societies possess large or majority population of the African descendants. The many legacy of over 300 years of slavery weighing on popular culture and consciousness persists as ferociously debilitating factor. The scourge of racism based on white supremacy, for example, remains virulent in the region. Institutional racism continues to be a critical force explaining the persistence of white economic dominance. The practice of political democracy has been effective in driving a culture of economic equality, but there remains a considerable amount of work to be done in creating a level playing field for all. Right? So we as Caribbeans, right, and even here in the Americas, we need to get away from the democratic system because we are a republic. Jamaicans, we need to get away from the democratic system because we are a republic. You see, 50 years ago in 1972, George Beckford, an economics professor at the University of the West Indies, published a seminal monograph entitled Persistent Poverty, in which he explained the impoverishment of the black majority in the Caribbean in terms of the institutional mechanism of the colonial economy and society. The relevance of the Beckford thesis remains striking today, and conversations about the legitimacy of the democracy still reverberate around his research. See, we gotta get away from that democracy, brothers and sisters. Then there are concerns regarding the standard markers of economic underdevelopment, right? Such as widespread literacy, endemic hunger, systematic child abuse, and inadequate public health facility, primitive communication infrastructure, widespread slum dwelling, and chronically low enrollment and student performance at all levels of the educational system. The Caribbean has the lowest youth enrollment in higher education in the hemisphere, an indication of the hostility to the popular education under colonialism that is resilient in recent public policy. This is why we as Caribbean need to get rid of that blueprint, that PDF file colonial system put on us. We gotta come back to our rules, our Hebraic rule. We gotta bring those systems into the school. We gotta teach our children about what happened to us during slavery. You understand? Not only that, but the biblical history. You understand? We gotta get to that intelligence level so the children could understand what and why things happen to us, so they could have a renewal of mind. We gotta revamp the whole school system in Jamaica and the Caribbeans to reflect us, diasporians, descendants of Hebrews. We gotta get back to that fundamental, brothers and sisters. Fundamentals. Right? Then there are concerns regarding the standard markers of economic underdevelopment, such as widespread literacy, endemic hunger, right? Endemic hunger, systemic child abuse, inadequate public health facilities, primitive communication infrastructure, widespread slum dwelling, and chronically low enrollment and student performance at all levels of the education system. The Caribbean has the lowest youth enrollment in higher education in the hemisphere, an indication of the hostility to popular education under colonialism that is resilient in recent public policy. Extreme social and racial inequality is a legacy of slavery in the region that continues to haunt and hinder the development efforts of regional and global institutions. Before the arrival of the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic, emphasis on pandemic, The Caribbean region was buckling under the strain of proliferating chronic non-communicable diseases. Colonialism has persisted for over a century after the end of former slavery, leaving black communities to deal with economic despair and the emerging political class to clean up the inherited colonial disarray. Black slavery was a modern form of racial plunder, and the obvious consequences of the economic extraction are seen in structural underdevelopment. The Caribbean is home to some of the most economically and socially exploited people of the modernity. And it's true, right? Our stiff-necked, weak so-called leaders in Jamaica, had the colonial mindset, selling all our resources, brothers and sisters. I remember growing up, we had bauxite. Jamaica should be rich right now, richest Caribbean country in the region right now, because of the bauxite we had. And the weak government sold us out, man. That's why we got to get rid of them and put in new, younger government that is for the people and the prosperity of their people. You know what I mean? We gotta get the blueprint of what Gaddafi had. Gaddafi had a nice blueprint for the prosperity of all his people. We need to get back to that. So individual thought. Put the people first, because the people put in office to look out for their best interest, not no foreign interest, not no Chinese boy interest or white boy interest, but the interest of the people. And the people need to demand their government work on their behalf and stop vote people in the office that based on their tribal line and based on because they got nice this or nice that, or they speak this. No, speak on the policies and speak on the issues that affect the people, and the people need to start reflect these issues onto those weak leaders that keep, what's the word, bootlicking the oppressors and asking for handout instead of creating your own for your own, if you understand what I mean. Before the arrival and the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic, emphasis on pandemic, the Caribbean region was buckling under the strain of proliferating chronic non-communicable disease. The rate of increase in the occurrence of type 2 diabetes, hypertension within the adult population, mostly people of African descent, was galloping. This other pandemic is discussed in terms of the racist culture of colonialism, in which the black population is generally considered addicted to foods containing high levels of sugar and salt. You see that? And that's true. It's very true. It is frequently observed that 6% of the black population in the region over the age of 60 years is affected with type 2 diabetes and hypertension. Jamaica and Barbados, the two historic giants of plantation sugar production and slavery, now struggles to avoid amputation that are often necessitated by medical complications resulting from the uncontrolled management of these diseases. Right? Look at the screen, brothers and sisters. This is an image detailed from the Ark of Return, the permanent memorial honoring the victim of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, located at the UN headquarters in New York. Right? March 23, 2015. Photo by Deborah Berkowitz. Right? Resistance to the oppression of slavery. Resisting to the oppression of slavery and ethnic colonialism has made the Caribbean a principal site of freedom, politics, and democratic desire. Revolts on slave ships cascaded into rebellions on plantations and in towns. Popular and grassroots activism have created a legacy of opposition to racism and ethnic dominance. The Caribbean is home to the Haitian Revolution, which produced the world's first black freedom state along with Jamaica, and the subsequent proliferation of the constitutional democracy. But you know, brothers and sisters, we as people should move from democratic to republic, for Jamaica is indeed a republic. Right? Right, brothers and sisters, the Black Lives Matter movement, equally rooted in the Caribbean political culture, which served to nurture the indigenous United States upsurge. Together they laid the foundation for a 21st century global contribution to political reform with a democratic sensibility. Presenting evidence of past wrong now facilitates the call for a new global order that includes fairness in access and equality in participation. The post-colonial, post-modern world will never be the same as a result of this legacy of resistance and the symbolism of racial injustice, key elements of humanity rising to its finest and highest potential, eliminating toxic contaminant of heretical ethnic racism from all societies and allowing them to embrace a horizontal perspective on ethnic and cultural diversity and ways of living will enable the 21st century to be better than any prior period in modernity. Right? It is for this and related reason that the Caribbean has emerged as an epicenter of the global reparatory justice movement. Its campaign for reparation for the crimes of slavery and colonialism has served as a template for the global South in seeking a level playing field development within the international economic order. In addition, it serves as a model for new forms of equity, including the climate and public health justice, presenting evidence of past wrongs now facilitates the call for the new global order that includes fairness in access and equality in participation. The Caribbean contribution therefore will help make the world a safer place for citizens who insist that it is a human right to live free from fear of violence, ethnic targeting and racial discrimination. Current forms of slavery and extreme social oppression are now identified more clearly and treated with similar public and policy opposition as traditional forms. The Caribbean is well positioned to discharge this diplomatic obligation to the world in the aftermath of its own tortured history and long journey towards freedom. Right, brothers and sisters? Most Jamaican Hebrew slaves came from the region of modern-day Ghana, Nigeria, and Central Africa, and include the Ekon, Ashanti, Yoruba, Igbo, right? Research who's Igbo and Yoruba, and Ibibio, right? Peoples. By the 18th century, Jamaica had become one of the most valuable British colonies, but the conditions endured by slaves were horrendous, brothers and sisters. Right? The image is on the screen. Right, brothers and sisters? Right? The African people of Haiti derived from the various areas spanning from Senegal to the Congo, most of which were brought from West Africa, with a considerable number also brought from Central Africa. South of these groups include those from the former Congo Kingdom, Congo, Benin, Iwi, and Yoruba and Togo lands, brothers and sisters. Right? So you have a legacy. Right? You have a legacy of what took place in the Caribbean, brothers and sisters. You know, these things need to be taught to the children, and the children, so they could understand themselves. Right? And let me reiterate again, your history did not start with slavery. It's a part of it because of our forefathers' disobedience and our continuous stiff-necked ways against the Most High, Yahuwah, and His Holy Son, Yahusha, HaMashiach. On that note, brothers and sisters, blessed love and shalom.